Hello friends, and I welcome again in our studio Dr. Lorraine Day. And today, as we promised you last week, we are going to speak about cancer. What causes cancer and how can it be cured? Can cancer be cured even? Dr. Day, you have yourself experienced cancer. Can you please tell us what book you wrote about it? What's the name of the book? And can you tell us, as a medical doctor, how did you cure your cancer? Because obviously you're here with us today.
Well, yes, but it wasn't just one book that I have written, because that would be like saying, I want to be an attorney and I want to pass my bar. So just tell me the one book I have to read to become an attorney and pass the bar. Our health is more complex than that. It shouldn't have to be complex, but people have gotten so far from good health, so far from God, that they don't know how to be well anymore. I made my first DVD called You Can't Improve on God in 1997. All of it's still true. All of it's still relevant. But from the comments I got after I wrote it, from the questions I got, I thought, oh my word. The major question was, how big is a glass? How big is a glass? Because I was talking about drinking glasses of water and glasses of carrot juice. They didn't know how big a glass was, so I knew that nobody had a measuring cup and nobody was cooking. Everybody was eating fast food, eating out, eating takeout, all that. So I thought, oh, I guess I'm going to have to be a whole lot more specific.
Is it
8 ounces glass? 8 ounces glass. Okay. So I started writing more, and I have a starter package. I'll tell you right up front, I have a starter package that contains everything anybody needs to know to reverse their cancer if they'll actually do it. Everything they need to know, and they don't ever have to buy one more thing in their whole life to be free from every disease except for food, and you have to buy that anyway unless you grow your own. And it contains 4 DVDs, 4 books, and 6 CDs.
Okay.
And that's everything you need to know. I developed breast cancer. I had a tiny lump high on my chest. It was the size of a half of a split pea. I didn't think it was cancer. It just bothered me when I put my seatbelt on. So I went to a friend of mine, a plastic surgeon, and had it taken out under local. Mm-hmm. But it came back cancer, and it had spread all through my chest wall by that time. So my friend, he was a college classmate of mine, he said, look, this is beyond my pay grade. I'm a plastic surgeon. Go to a breast cancer surgeon. So a few weeks later, after that wound was healed, I went to a friend of mine. The first biopsy was done at Loma Linda University in California, and the second one was done at Scripps. The head breast cancer surgeon there, who was a friend of mine, who actually married one of my medical school classmates, and I said, you can go in through the same incision now that it's healed, but you can't make a bigger incision. I don't want you to do anything else. And I said, at that time, I thought you could cut cancer out. You cannot cut cancer out.
Is that what they teach you in medical schools, that you can cut cancer out?
That's all. There are only 2 ways of treating anything in medical school. And a doctor only learns how to do 2 methods of treatment, nothing else. Just 2. 1, give you drugs. Drugs never cure disease because they only address the symptoms of the disease. They make you feel better while your disease is getting worse.
Right.
All right, and they have all sorts of side effects that cause additional diseases. Or they cut out your organs or cut off your body parts. Wow. Well, as I said earlier, I did not develop breast cancer because I had too many breasts. So cutting one or both of them off would not cure me. What do you do if you have brain cancer? They cut off your head? This is craziness. And for a headache, let's cut off their head or give them a drug. So doctors only know 2 forms of treatment. Give you a drug or cut off your body part. Neither of those cure cancer. I may have said last time, I don't remember, but when a child is very sick with the chicken pox and they have pox marks on their skin, no parent would ever take their child to the surgeon and say, cut off all the pox marks in my skin, in my child's skin, so my child will be well. because a parent knows that when the child's body gets well, the pox marks will go away automatically.
Good point.
So even though cancer is not a contagious disease like chickenpox is, the same principle applies. The tumor is a result of a sick body, not the cause of a sick body. Cutting out the organ will not help you, because if you still keep doing all the things that caused the tumor to form in the first place, you will either develop your tumor again in the same place or in a different place, or you'll develop a different life-threatening disease. Because cancer and all other diseases do not fall from the sky, they don't just happen, and they're not genetic. They are not genetic. May I say that 100 times? They are not genetic. Almost every disease is not genetic. Genetic diseases account for less than 1% of the deaths, of all deaths, genetic diseases. Cancer's not genetic, heart disease is not genetic, Parkinson's is not genetic, nothing is genetic. So I'm telling you, don't have your DNA tested. Don't go to 23andMe and all of these other places, because what they're doing is the government has access to all of that. And what they're going to do is start forcing you to take drugs to prevent a disease they say you're going to get.
Right.
So don't do that. Don't do that. But disease is not genetic. If cancer were genetic, then our grandparents would have had to have as much as we do in order to pass it down to us. But the incidence of cancer in America in 1900 was 3%.
Wow.
Now it's over 50%.
Yeah.
It's not in the genes. We are actually damaging our own genes, but we have a marvelous DNA repair mechanism in our body that can repair something like 66,000 damages a day.
Wow. Amazing.
So we've got to stop abusing our bodies so we can let this DNA repair mechanism work. Mm-hmm. So what we have to realize is that all diseases, including all cancers, are caused by the way we live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. Live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. Now you might say, how can the way you think cause cancer? Here's an illustration. If you drive into your garage at night and the light bulb happens to be burned out, so it's black when your lights go off, and you say, well, I'm going to go turn on the light at the door inside. So you get out of your car and you step on a snake. You jump back in the car, your heart is racing, your stomach's in a knot, and you think, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't see. You turn the lights on, the headlights on of your car, and you can't see anything anyway. And so what you do is you sit there and say, okay, well, now I will jump over where the snake was. Mm-hmm. So you jump over where the snake was, and you go turn on the light, and you find it's a garden hose. All right. It doesn't matter that it was a garden hose, because you had all the things happen in your body when you thought it was a snake. Mm-hmm. So that's how your thinking affects you. Because if you think something, and if you're worried and anxious and all that, you trigger your fight or flight reaction. Your fight or flight reaction will pour adrenaline and cortisol into your body. Adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah, Dr. Day, you know, what comes to mind is when you go to doctor and they tell you have a cancer, they kind of pronounced over you this cancer, and then you get this thing that if you don't go to chemotherapy tomorrow, you're going to die. And they literally tell you this, you will die. So yes. Now that's part of your thinking. Now you believe this with your mind, with your head. So what happens, to your body, right?
Well, of course. And I talk about that in one of my books. I talk about in my DVD, Pointing the Bone. When you point the bone, that's what the old witch doctor used to do. He would point the bone at someone, say you're going to die, and they would die.
Right.
They would die because they have triggered all of these responses in their body. And so, again, when you get to know that there is a doctor who will give you 100% guarantee that if you do it his way, you'll be well. And that is only one physician in the world, and that is God. He has given us 100% guarantee. But Christians, I mean, the churches are full of people who are sick and dying. They don't read their Bible. They don't read their Bible. They don't study their Bible. They just read a verse here and there. I have been appalled at what some people have said to me. I say, you need to read your Bible. Oh, shall I start in Acts 2? And I say, Acts 2? Oh, that's the beginning of the church. Hey, you're going to eliminate all the Gospels of the life of Jesus Christ, which is what Christianity is all about.
Right.
You're going to eliminate those. And one man told me, he says, well, my pastor told me that the Bible is just a reference book. Oh, like a dictionary, I guess. I mean, we need to know what it says. And so as a doctor, I already knew that doctors don't know how to cure anything.
Wow.
When I say that, I'm telling you, doctors don't know how to cure anything, because drugs never cure disease. Drugs only address symptoms. They make you feel better while your disease continues to progress, because it does not address the underlying cause, which is always the way you live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. We are never taught this in our medical school. Everything I'm telling you now, I learned, which is actually a lot of this is in the medical literature, but we're never taught that. We are never taught that because the drug companies, and guess who controls the drug companies? Okay, the drug companies control and what religion or ethnicity was Rockefeller?
Jews.
Jews, that's right. Okay, so you said it, I didn't. So anyway, it's all the drug companies are owned by the Jews. Yeah. So they control organized medicine. They don't want us to know these things. Recently, an article came out where they admitted that getting people well from disease was not a good business model.
That's right.
It's not a good business model because you get them well, and that's why I became an orthopedic trauma surgeon, because I wanted to get people well. Because if you're shot or stabbed or run over by a bus, you need somebody like me to put you back together again. That is not a disease. That is an accident.
That's right.
That is what a trauma doctor does, puts people back together again. Other doctors give you pills for your disease, or they send you to a surgeon who's going to cut out your organs or cut off your body parts. No disease has ever been caused by having too many organs or too many body parts, and no disease has ever been caused by a deficiency of any drug. So that's why doctors can't cure anything. And I recognized that when I was in medical school. I said, I don't want to be one of those. I'm going to do this where I can actually get people well. So I developed cancer. I was diagnosed on November 1, 1993, 25 years ago last November. I had a tiny tumor. I thought by that time I had learned something about alternative medicine. And I thought, I'll just change my diet to a totally vegan diet and I will be fine. I changed my diet to a totally vegan diet, no processed food, eating 75% of my food raw. Mm-hmm. And guess what? My tumor continued to grow.
Wow.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. Not because I was not on the right diet. I was on the right diet. The diet that I continued to eat, the diet I still eat. But it's a whole lot more than that it takes to get rid of a life-threatening disease. Whether it's, by the way, a year before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I had quite a severe tremor. When I got well from my cancer, all of my Parkinson's symptoms went away too.
Amazing.
And that's when I realized that all diseases are caused by the way we live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. I have no diseases now. I have no arthritis. I don't suffer from anything. I don't take any medications. I have the energy of a 30-year-old. And a week ago, last Sunday, I turned 82.
And you know, we see that. You got a lot of comments. You look great. You look very youthful. You look so healthy. So that's why we have you on here today. We want to look the same way.
Right. So the thing is that what you have to do is change the way you live, think, act, eat, and handle stress. That's why God's health plan is simple, but it's not easy, because people don't want to change their dearly loved bad habits that are causing their disease. They say, oh, I like my meat, or oh, I like to do this. Well, that's what children say. We're all grown up now. So it doesn't matter what you like. It matters how God says you should conduct your life, including what you eat and how you live and how you handle stress. That's what we need to do. And of course, being a Christian means you give up your right to yourself and you give it to God. And so you do what he says. But the churches, as I said, are full of people who are sick and dying, and they don't read or study the Bible. So in Deuteronomy 7:11-15, God says, if, that's a big if you follow my laws, and that includes all of God's natural health laws that are discussed in great detail in my materials, if you follow my laws, my commandments, all 10 of them. Now, what's the first commandment? Is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. All right, well then God says, if you follow my laws, commandments, and decrees, I will keep you free from every disease. So, when a person goes to the doctor, what are they saying? Oh, my doctor knows more than God.
Right.
So, you are breaking the first commandment. You are breaking the first commandment because God says you do it my way. I'm the one who gives you the 100% guarantee. No doctor will give you a 100% guarantee for anything. They'll make you sign a consent that they could kill you or maim you for life, and neither you nor your family will ever sue them. That's what they make you sign. Where God says, I don't care what the disease is. I can keep you free and I can heal you. And remember when in Psalms 103:3 he says, he forgives all our sins and heals all our diseases. It's in that order.
Wow.
When the man was let down through the roof for Jesus to heal him, he was paralyzed. What's the first thing Jesus said? The only thing Jesus said, your sins be forgiven you.
That's true.
It's true. So it's important. It's very important what you eat. It's very important. But you have to learn to love your enemies. Now, people call me anti-Semitic because I expose what the Jews are doing. Yes. I could not have gotten well from cancer if I hated Jews or hated blacks. I could not get well from cancer because when you hate people, you trigger your fight or flight reaction. You pour cortisone into your body that destroys your immune system.
And I know you don't hate Jews because you love us, me and Steve, and we are Jews, and you are here on our program, and we know you love Jews. You are just exposing the criminal aspect.
Of course. Yeah. My best friend, to show you how naive I was about Jews, my best friend in college, when I went to USC, she got invited to a party, and I said, this is at the beginning of the year. We just met, but we've become close friends. And she was invited to this party, and I said, I wonder why I wasn't invited. And she said, well, you're not Jewish. I said, are you Jewish? She says, yes. So I didn't know the difference. Right. And yet my mother was raised in Brooklyn. My mother was raised in Brooklyn, and I heard her talk about Jews. She didn't talk bad about Jews. The only thing she would say, which was a fact, was she lived in Flatbush. You never went shopping early in the morning on Nostrand Avenue because the Jews were all the merchants and they had to cheat the first customer in order to have a good day. But she didn't hate Jews. She just didn't go shopping early in the morning on Nostrand Avenue. Brooklyn was so Jewish when she was growing up that when there was a Jewish holiday, only she and another girl were in class. They were all Jews. Right. All Jews. I didn't grow up hating Jews. They had certain idiosyncrasies that she would talk about, but she didn't hate them either.
Right.
But when I was rotating through Mount Zion Hospital in San Francisco as a resident, you go through many, many hospitals. I had never seen people behave like that in my life. I had to talk about a great awakening. I saw Jewish doctors screaming at each other in the hallway in front of patients. I saw them throwing instruments at each other 20 feet down the hallway. I said to them, why do you behave like this? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you're screaming at each other. The patients that can get out of bed are in the hallway watching you. What is wrong with you? And they said, oh, that's fun. I had never seen people behave like this. Now, is it anti-Semitic that I say, why are you behaving like this? There was no courtesy. There was no kindness. It was just an abomination. And I said, why do you behave? Oh, that's fun? See, this is so far from Christ.
Right.
So far from. Now, not every Jew behaves that way. My best friend at USC didn't behave that way. She was the kindest, sweetest, most loving person you could know. But she said about her mother, she told me one day, she told her mother, she says, my mother is just like a New York Jew. Well, I didn't know what that was. She said she told her mother, Mom, I love you. You're my mother, but I never want to be like you. Mm-hmm. So there are some Jews who behave like that. Right? But not all. She was so good that when she got married a year before I did, my parents didn't have any money. Her father was a very well-to-do dentist. So she took me with her to pick out her wedding gown so I could wear it when I got married.
Wow, that's nice.
So the whole point is, everybody puts all these monikers on people. It's not true. Just because you expose the evil that some people of a group are doing. I'm a woman. I'm actually a feminist, not like Gloria Steinem. I believe that women should have equal rights and they should be able to do what they want. But I am not one of these hardcore feminists, actively going down the street waving banners. But I don't like women like that. That doesn't mean I don't like women.
Right, exactly. In a way, I'm a feminist too, because I believe that women can preach the word of God. In many Christian churches, they say woman has to be always quiet. And I don't believe in that. I believe that we are partners to men. We are not above them, not below them, but it has nothing to do with pagan feminism today, when they all get naked and they go to the streets naked and they, hate men. So not that kind of feminism.
So back to the health business. So I changed my diet completely. My tumor kept growing. I started trying one alternative after another. I tried 714X. I tried the Eat for Your Type diet. I tried all these different things. I tried hydrogen peroxide. I tried I have a DVD called Sorting Through the Maze of Alternative Medicine. What works, what doesn't, and why. Some of these methods worked 80 years ago on some people, when people were eating differently then, they weren't so stressed, they didn't have quotas at work, all families had a mother and father in them, and some of them worked 80 years ago. They don't work anymore. Right. And I show you why on that DVD. There's only one way that works. The only way you can reverse a disease is to find out what causes it and then stop doing that. Okay. That's the only way. It's sort of, if you have the bus runs over your foot and it's still on your foot, you can't get your foot even any semblance of being well until you get the bus off your foot. So what you have to do is you have to stop doing the things that cause cancer. Well, people say, well, nobody knows what causes cancer. Oh, yes, it's all in the medical literature. It's just doctors are not taught it. If you go to a doctor and say, what causes cancer? They say, we don't know. We think it's in the genes. Mm-hmm. It's not in the genes. I just explained why. But so they don't know. They don't know what causes cancer. But when I set out to find out what causes cancer, it's all in the medical literature. Let me give you a few instances. Sunlight actually does not cause cancer of any sort, does not cause skin cancer. Sunlight actually decreases the size of internal cancerous tumors. Decreases.
Wow.
Sunlight. Sunlight boosts your immune system. Sunlight decreases your stress. Sunlight does all sorts of things. Sunlight turns cholesterol into vitamin D, which you need to cure cancer in your skin when you get it. So you need sunlight. You can't grow a healthy garden without sun. You can't grow a healthy human being without sun. The reason that we know, and we may have talked about this last time, reason that we know that sunlight is not the cause of skin cancer is that in 1900, 75% of Americans worked outdoors and there was no skin cancer. Now only 10% work outdoors and skin cancer is everywhere. It is not the sun. It is the way people are living, thinking, acting, eating, and handling stress. That's what causes skin cancer and every other kind of skin cancer. So you need sunlight. You need sunlight. So what about water? The body is 75% water. The brain is 85% water. So you need water. You lose 8 to 10 glasses of water every day just by living. Your breath is moist. You fog up a mirror. You perspire even when it's not hot. And when the body, particularly when you are not a vegetarian, when you eat animal products, meat, poultry, and fish contain no water and no fiber. Mm-hmm. So when you eat those things, your body has to take water from the cells to put in to your stomach to digest those foods. So you lose 10 glasses of water every day, even if you don't get out of bed.
Wow, amazing.
So and if you drink coffee or alcohol or caffeinated sodas or energy drinks, you're losing even more because caffeine and alcohol are both diuretics. They take more water out of your body than comes in with the drink. So I was a big coffee drinker because I was operating night and day, and I drank 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day. I was killing myself. I didn't know it because I'm a doctor, and doctors are stupid about health. They know nothing about health. I can say this because I know. I'm on the inside. Doctors are some of the most unhealthy people you ever want to meet. They know nothing about health and very little about disease.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, that's right. But you know about this whole business of Jews and Christians and what they're telling you in the religious field. You know they're full of lies.
Yes.
Medicine is the same way. Full of lies.
And doctor, I want to go later, but first, I wrote this for myself. LTAS, living, thinking, acting, and
eating and handling stress.
Eating, LTAS. Okay, yes, I'm making notes for myself. But last time you said, after the broadcast, you mentioned that they're replacing in the United States all Gentile doctors with Jewish doctors for a certain purpose, and it has something to do with Noahide laws. And so later on, I would like for you to tell us about this, but can you tell us, so you told us about eating vegan diet or plant-based diet.
Here are the 10 steps. Nutrition, exercise. Do you know that exercise has the same benefit in someone who has, let's say, depression, anxiety, or bipolar disorder? Exercise has the same value as any drug they give you.
Wow. And I found that out on myself. I just started biking. I'm biking 4 miles a day, and it had made world of difference in the way I think, how I feel, my energy levels. Amazing.
Right. So exercise, so nutrition, exercise, water. Again, the brain can't work because every thought that you transmit from one brain cell to another goes on waterways. So when your body is dehydrated, you can't think right. And so what do they give you? They give you a drug. You can develop anxiety just from being dehydrated. And you don't even know it. And doctors will tell you, oh, just drink when you're thirsty. No. You've got to drink all the time. You've got to drink your water. You've got to drink 8 to 10 glasses a day minimum. And if it's hot or if you're particularly stressed, you've got to drink more because you lose it from those things. So, and you've got to get sleep at the proper time of night. And that is, you really need to get to sleep by 10 o'clock. That our circadian rhythm, God has designed us to go to sleep. And when you go to sleep later, you produce different hormones in your body. In fact, you produce hormones that make you hungry if you go to bed later.
That's true. Because, when the more you stay up, the more hungry you get.
Now, another thing, Alex Trebek of Jeopardy program has just announced that he has 4th stage pancreatic cancer. And so he doesn't have long for this earth, but he says, pray for me and all of this, and we're going to beat this. I mean, he said, I'm going to continue on with my work. Well, that's stupid, because when a body is sick, it needs rest. Yes. It needs rest. So people say, they drink coffee. Well, if you're tired and you need something to pick you up, you're not getting enough sleep, or you're not eating right, or you're doing something, you're too stressed. So when a body is sick, it needs rest. I tried continuing to work too. And guess what? I got so sick I couldn't. And that's when I became bedridden. So people say, well, I don't have enough time in my life. I'm too busy. I don't have enough time to do all this stuff to be well. I said, that's fine. Then you're going to have to find time to be sick. If you don't have time to be well, you're going to have to find time to be sick. And people will say, well, I have to continue working even though I have cancer because I've got to support my children. And I say, I'm a single mother. And I say, who's going to support them when you're dead?
Right.
That's where you have to trust God. Yeah. God says he'll supply all your needs. People say, oh, I trust God. That's when they're not tested. When they're tested, they find out they don't trust God. Let me just get some water myself. Yes. So I tried all these 40 different types of alternatives. None of them worked. I was bedridden. I was bedridden for 6 months. At one point, I was not expected to live through the night. I knew I was dying. I've seen people die. I'm a trauma surgeon. They'll bring them in with 3 breaths left in them. So I know how people look when they're dying. And I was so close to death. I was dying. And my husband at the time, not the husband I have now, he said to me, I'm taking you to the hospital. You're dying. Well, I had not been able to eat anything for 2 weeks. I just was too sick to eat. And I hadn't been able to drink anything, even suck on ice chips for days. So I knew I was dying. Right. But I said, if I go to the hospital, I know that my medical colleagues can put in an IV, hydrate me up, and they can give me nutrition through the IV, and in a couple of hours I will feel like a new person. But I will die. Because I will have turned my back on God's way and gone to man. And I will die. So I refused to go. Said, I'm not going. Even though I knew that in a couple of hours I could feel like a new person. But I would still have my cancer, and doctors don't know how to cure cancer. Doctors develop cancer at the same rate as the general population. They die from cancer and every other disease at the same rate as the general population. So if they don't know how to get themselves well, how can they do it in you?
Right. That's
okay. So I knew that. So I said to God, that's when I said to God, I was raised a Christian, but I said, and this caused a firestorm. I don't know if it caused one with you, but it caused a firestorm on my email when I said, I could not love a God who was going to kill me or destroy me or burn me in hell if I didn't love him, because my parents would never do that to me. So I eventually found out who God is, and he's not like that. So that's all in my book, Who Rewrote the Bible. But I said to God, I don't know if you're up there, but if you are, I know you've promised in Deuteronomy 7:11-15 that if I follow your laws, commandments, and decrees, you'll keep me free from every disease. I'm full of cancer. By that time, it had spread different parts of my body. And I said, I'm doing everything I know how to do, and I'm getting worse. I'm on my deathbed. And so you've got to open my mind so I can see whatever I need to do next. And then if you're not like the churches teach, show me. So he opened up my mind to remember something that one of my mentors had told me 25 years before because he went to medical school before they had IVs. So he told me 25 years before, I'd never thought about it again, how to keep people alive when they were dehydrated and they didn't have IVs. And I talk about that on my DVD called Cancer Doesn't Scare Me Anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to keep myself alive for the next few days. And then when I had refused to go to man and stayed with God, even though I had no idea how I would live till morning, that is when God opened my mind so I could understand the rest of the things that I needed to do to get well. His way. Because I was using only the things that God created and using them only in the form that God created them, not modified by man. Nothing that wasn't available 3,000 years ago in the form that it's available now. Now, you see, if we had to have advanced modern medicine in order to get well, then God would be the biggest bigot of all. Because what about all these countries who have no access to first world medicine? Mm-hmm. They don't have any access, so then God would be a big bigot. Wow. The only people in advanced countries that could get well. But God uses everything in nature to get us well. And everybody has, cancerous tumors grow twice as fast if you're breathing indoor air as if you're breathing outdoor air. Just the air you breathe.
Yeah. And he has put everything here for us for free, actually.
Of course, everything in the plant is free except for food, and if we were designed to grow that ourselves, but we have to buy it, and that's the only thing that it costs, is free. And you know, the average cost of cancer care in America is between $500,000 and $1 million for each cancer patient. That's the average cost. And all of these shills for the drug companies say, oh, she's just getting rich off of these people. She's just preying on them. And the starter package that contains 4 DVDs, 6 CDs, and 4 books costs $160, includes the shipping and handling anywhere in the U.S. It costs a little more to ship it overseas. And you never have to buy anything else in your entire life except food. And you can get well from every disease. God has made it available for everybody on the face of the earth to use his plan to get well. But people don't. The Christian churches are full of people who are sick and dying and taking drugs. Now in Revelation 18:23, God says the whole world will be deceived by their sorceries. Witchcraft. What is that word sorceries in the Greek?
Pharmakeia.
That's right, pharmacy, drug medications.
Yeah.
Because they offer you a quick fix. See, God says, I want you to change your life. I want you to give up grudge holding, give up anger, learn to love your enemies. Now, you don't endorse what your enemies are doing, but you can love what God can make out of them when he changes them. But you don't love the terrible stuff they're doing now. But you have to give up, you have to learn to forgive. You have to give up anger and grudge holding. You have to give up worry and fear. You have to learn to trust God, really trust God. All Christians say, oh, I trust God, I trust God. What does that mean to you? Oh, you trust God, you're going to the doctor. You're going to the doctor. Jesus Christ is right at your side saying, what are you doing? I've told you how to get well. People say, well, I need to go for a checkup. I haven't been to a doctor in 25 years because they don't know anything. Everything I learned about health, I learned after my medical training. I was a professor at the University of California, San Francisco Medical School. I was chief of orthopedic surgery and trauma at San Francisco General Hospital. I was at the top of the heap in medicine. Doctors don't know how to get you well. They only know how to give you drugs or cut out your organs or cut off your body parts. They don't know anything else.
Wow. Powerful statement.
So I don't go to doctors again and if I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't even gone for a biopsy because I had a lump. That's all I had to know. I don't need a diagnosis. I know I have a lump and something's wrong.
Right.
Because the plan to get well is the same whether you have a benign lumps are abnormal too. Mm-hmm. And they become malignant. So what you want to do is if you have a lump, you don't need a diagnosis. You need to go on God's health plan. Because a lump is abnormal, whether it's benign or malignant.
Yes.
If you have a rash of some sort, that's like psoriasis or something, it's caused by the way you're living, eating, and handling stress.
Yes, doctor, but now what do we do when we have, they're changing our foods, you know, they're doing this GMO, everything is becoming GMO and...
Eat organic, and so you have to eat organic, and then some people write to me and say, I can only get a few things organic. I said, you do the best you can because God knows where you live. It's not like God doesn't know where you live. You do the very best you can, and God knows if you're doing the best you can. Some people say to me, well, I know so-and-so who followed your health plan and they died. I said, did you know their heart? Mm-hmm. Did you know their heart? If they had forgiven everyone who ever wronged them? I said, the only one who knows their heart is God. And you see, if a person thinks they're following God's health plan and they're not getting well and they die, then there are only two options. Either they weren't following it the way God says to follow it, or God's a liar. That's only two options, but God does not lie. So it's always our problem, not his. And if we truly are seeking the Lord, he'll open our mind to find it out. So I talk about on the DVD Cancer Doesn't Scare Me Anymore, I show you what a doctor will tell you to do in every instance and how it's going to harm you. Chemotherapy causes cancer. Radiation causes cancer. You know, if you go to a dentist and you're going to have an x-ray of one tooth, so then they come in and they put the lead shield on you. It's about 15 pounds of lead, and they put it all the way up to here, and the person who's taking the x-ray runs out of the room and hides behind the lead shield that's in the wall. Why? Because radiation causes cancer.
Yeah.
But when you have cancer, they say, now we have to give you huge amounts of radiation, which we told you to avoid because it causes cancer. What? That's crazy. Do you see what I mean? It doesn't make any sense because nobody thinks. They are mesmerized by the white coat. Mesmerized by the white coat. The guy in the white coat, the woman in the white coat, knows nothing. They only know what they're taught, and that doesn't get you well. How can you get a sick person well? By poisoning them with chemo or burning them with radiation.
Well, they are taught by Rockefellers, right? Didn't Rockefeller take over medicine in 19th century in United States, all the medical schools?
Yes, Rockefellers did. But again, this was the plan to control people's health. But when we really have God in our life, and Jesus Christ has opened our mind to truth, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Now that he does not say only religious truth. Only spiritual truth. No, truth.
All truth.
When we know the Lord, we will know the truth in politics. We will know the truth in medicine. We will know the truth in religion, because the religions are lying to us just as much as the doctors are. So the only way we can know truth is to know the Lord. And the churches, if the churches knew the Lord, they would know how to tell people to get well. But they don't. So, and then I got a woman from South Africa just wrote to me the other day, and she said, you know, my husband and I are all alone down here, and I'm sick, and I said, you have Jesus Christ by your side. How can you say you're all alone? It just shows you, she claims to be a Christian. She's not a Christian. People will write to me, you know, say, I live in Enid, Oklahoma, or whatever place, and that, you know, and there are, do you know any doctors here who can take care of me? And I say, yes. And I write back to them and I say, yes, I know a doctor right in your hometown. He even makes house calls. His name is Jesus Christ.
That was nice.
That's the only doctor you need. But people don't trust him. And I'm not saying you just raise your hands to heaven and say, oh, Lord, heal me. No, it's hard duty. God wants to change everything in your life. Because when you hold on to grudges, when you are angry, when you are worried, when you are anxious, you trigger your fight or flight reaction. It pours adrenaline into your body, hypes you up, and makes you very tired. When the adrenaline wears off, it's like drinking 8 cups of coffee at once. And it pours cortisone into your body, and cortisone suppresses your immune system. So when you are anxious, when you hold on to anger or grudges, you are killing yourself.
Yes.
You are killing yourself. So all these people who are angry, and one of them wrote to me this week, called me every filthy name in the book, called me a hater, called me this. He is killing himself. He is killing himself. And that's why God says we reap what we sow. The word punishment isn't in the Bible. God never punishes us for sin. The word is always visit. If you look up the word punish in Strong's Concordance and you look up the word visit, it's exactly the same word.
Wow.
The word is always visit. It is the translators who arbitrarily and incorrectly change it to punish when they want to make God look harsh. The word is always visit.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Well, again, the word apolumi, you know, the parable of the lost sheep. Well, the lost sheep was found, right? Alive. Well, the word lost is apolumi. So when it's used for the lost sheep, it's always called lost because sheep didn't die. But when that word apolumi is used with a sinner, the translators change it to destroyed.
Wow.
Not destroyed, it's lost, waiting to be found. So this is how they've changed the Bible. That's why the title of my book is Who Rewrote the Bible. You see, the authors of the Bible were inspired by God. Translators of the Bible were hired by man.
That's right, and that's true.
People don't know either that King James, that ordered the King James Bible to be, was a homosexual.
Yes, I have heard that before. Yes,
He is buried between his two homosexual lovers.
You're going to be hated for that one.
Well, the whole point is, again, I don't care. I don't care. It's just truth. How can you be hated for truth? Oh, don't say anything bad about anybody. And people will hold up the King James Bible and say, this is right out of the mouth of God. No, it isn't. No, what's right, what's right out of the mouth of God is the Interlinear Bible, which is the Bible in Hebrew and Greek with the English words there. And I show you how you can study the Bible to find out the truth. That's why I say the word hell is not in the Bible. The word in the Old Testament is Sheol, and it means grave. It does not mean hell. And it's translated properly as grave 80% of the time, but when they want to make God look harsh, they arbitrarily change it incorrectly to hell. The word hell is not in the Bible. And people get very angry about this. One woman said, "Woman, you're wrong. God's going to burn them." And I thought, wow, that's certainly the Spirit of Christ. You know, how can you say that? You will enjoy seeing people burn to death? You know, which of your children would you burn to death just because they disobeyed you? So anyway, back to God's health plan. It's proper nutrition, exercise, water, temperance, which means elimination of all additives, preservatives, when you use an elimination of all refined sugar. Refined sugar actually totally paralyzes your immune system.
Yes.
Paralyzes your immune system. Your white blood cells can't work.
I believe the white sugar was outlawed earlier in times, and it wasn't accessible to people, and then they started refining it for the purpose of getting rich in medical field, so people get sick and they get diseases, you know.
Anyway, they just like it. They like sugar. The average American in 1850 ate 8.2 pounds of sugar a year. Now the average American eats 152 pounds of sugar a year.
Wow, what a poison.
Yeah, so this is what has happened, and that's one reason everybody's getting so sick. In 1900, the average American ate a certain amount of animal products, but it was usually the cow in their backyard, not GMO cows and not cows they give all these hormones. Oh, by the way, when a person takes an antibiotic, see, no, there's not a single drug that can cure any disease. Antibiotics don't cure disease either. Oh, but people say, well, oh, yes, I had this infection. The doctor gave me an antibiotic. I'm cured. No, you're not. What an antibiotic will do is it kills bacteria. That's all it knows how to do. Every doctor has had patients in the intensive care unit, had a bad infection, given them the right dose of the right antibiotic, and they die because they don't have enough immune system to get them well. An antibiotic will only kill bacteria. When you take an antibiotic, you also kill all the good bacteria in your intestine, which is 1/3 of your immune system. You wipe it out. So you become weaker and less able to be healthy and less able to fight any disease that may be attacking your body. All right? So this is what you have to do. You have to understand that drugs are a quick fix. Satan says, God says, I want you to change your heart. On one of my DVDs, I talk about that with cancer, surgery is always necessary, but not with a surgeon's knife. You need a new heart, and not the heart from a cadaver on life support. You need the heart of Jesus Christ. And that's what you need in order to get well, because God says you must follow my laws, my commandments, and my decrees, and then you will be free from every disease. People just think, well, when Jesus was on earth, he healed people miraculously, and he did. Because if he healed them the way that he heals them now by a change of heart, he was moving around from town to town. They wouldn't know that it was him that did it. See? So what we've got to do is we've got to follow God's laws, commands, and decrees, and it's a slow process. From the time that I started on God's health plan until my cancer was gone, and I had a tumor the size of a large grapefruit on my chest. What you do, rather than trying to kill the tumor, is that you deprive it of what it needs to grow. You deprive it of the cortisol. You deprive it of the adrenaline.
Sure.
You deprive it of the meat, poultry, and fish that is filthy and has extra added hormones in it, plus the hormones of the animal that promote your cancer growth. You've got enough hormones of your own. You don't need any animal's hormones. You don't need a dead animal on your plate to eat to make you healthy. People say, well, where do I get my protein? God put protein in every single fruit, grain, and vegetable. Spinach is 49% protein. Lettuce is 43% protein. Broccoli is 46% protein. Lemons are 16% protein. God put protein in every fruit, grain, and vegetable. You don't need to eat a dead animal in order to get your protein. Why don't we get smarter than a cow? What does a cow do? It eats grass to get its nutrition. And so, well, I need my protein. Well, where does the cow get its protein? From eating the grass. So I've got to eat the cow in order to get the protein, and the cow's smarter than we are.
That is so funny, but so true, isn't it?
Not only that, you see, protein is only needed, it's the meat and dairy industry, and guess who runs that? That wants you to eat a lot more protein. The average American eats 4 times more protein than they need. The only thing that protein is needed for is for growth and repair. And people are killing themselves, by the way, on these keto diets. Ketosis, to a doctor, is a life-threatening condition. The reason people are losing weight is because their bodies are sick. That's why they lose weight.
Well, keto diet, now that you mention it, when I looked into it, it was only meat and dairy.
Right.
Meat,
right.
dairy, and some vegetables, you know.
What is God's ideal diet?
Plant diet. I mean, you know, when he said in Genesis, I give you all the greens to eat for your food.
Nothing died. Nothing died.
Right.
So it was fruits, grains, and vegetables. What was God's ideal diet when he brought the Israelites out in the Exodus? What did he give them? Manna. Totally vegan diet. And what did they say? We loathe this light bread. Give us the flesh pots of Egypt. So when God had heard that enough, what God's wrath is giving us what we demand and letting us reap the consequences. So he said, okay, I will give you quail, not for a day, not for 2 days, not for 5 days, not for 10 days, for a whole month until it comes out your nose. That's what he said, until it comes out your nostrils. And thousands of them died with the flesh still between their teeth. And not one of those who participated in that flesh-eating orgy ever entered the promised land.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right. And the ones who did enter the promised land, who did not participate in that, who were eating just manna, it says, there were over 1 million of them, it says, there was not one sick among them.
Wow, powerful.
So then what's God going to feed us in heaven and the earth made new? Nothing will die. So it's going to be a vegan diet. Even the ox will lay down with the lion, and they will both eat straw. God made all the animals vegetarian too. They didn't eat each other until sin entered. They didn't eat each other. They were all vegan vegetarians too. So this is a compelling thing which people never think about. If you still hanker for flesh food, you're not safe to save, because the animals in heaven and the new earth will not be safe if you hanker for flesh food. So we've got to start eating God's way. People say, well, God let us eat flesh food after the flood. Yes, and what happened to the life expectancy after the flood?
Well, it went down.
Rock. Oh, it was over 900 years before. In a few generations, it was 400 years, and then by David, it was 70 years. Now, vegetarians still live 10 years longer than meat eaters, even now.
Wow.
Even vegetarians that are not vegan vegetarians live 10 years longer than meat eaters. So this is the problem. People are ignoring what God has said. And so God has told us, if you obey my laws, but it's not just the food. You've got to do all the other too. Every step in the plan is just as important. So I deprived my cancer of the things that it needed to grow. And the interesting thing is, if you, on my website at drday.com, drday.com, you'll see this huge tumor I had. And it actually, the base of it was the whole width of my, it was like a pyramid, the whole width of my chest. And so as I started changing all of these things, and again, you know, I got so much flack when I was speaking out about the AIDS epidemic and, you know, the homosexuals were trying to kill me and all that. I had to forgive all of those people for everything they did, not endorse what they did, but give it to God and let Him, you know, Him give the consequences to these people either now or at the judgment, either way. So when I started giving up all that, the tumor started rounding up on my chest. And it detached eventually from my chest wall. I could get through my skin, I could get my fingers completely under it, and then it just started going away because I was depriving it of what it needed to grow. So it died.
Amazing.
And then, so it was 8 months until my cancer was gone, and then it was another 10 months for me to regain enough strength to sit at a desk and work. So I was 2 years getting worse, a year and a half getting better. That's 3.5 years. But then I was not, and before I was diagnosed with cancer, I could run 5 miles. After I got well enough to sit at a desk, until I was strong enough, because I had been so depleted of energy with the cancer, as well as the bed rest and all that, it took another 3 years before I could go to the gym, because my goal for going to the gym was to be able to sit up on an exercise bench under my own power rather than roll over and get up on all fours. I would be embarrassed. It took me 3 years to that point. And then it took me an additional 4 years before I could walk a mile. So I was so sick that it was 11 years from my diagnosis before I could again walk a mile when I had been able to run 5 miles before. So, you see, God is changing us. He's giving us patience. He's teaching us patience. I talk about my cancer, and I was in terrible pain. For a year, the cancer was so painful, I could not sleep more than 2 hours a night. I was in pain 24/7, all the time. So when people say, well, you know, but my cancer is painful, I know what it is. There were times that I would run around the house before I was bedridden, so sick I was bedridden. I would run around the house trying to get rid of the pain, just to trying to detract myself from the pain. So, but why does it have to be so painful? There is a good reason. So we'll never go back and do it again.
Wow, that's a good reason, yes.
Good reason. I will never go back and do it again. It was too painful. If there was a quick fix, then okay, I just go back and do it again and I can get well easily. No, you'll never. So it has to be painful. God knows what we have to do to be able to keep us on the straight and narrow. And that's why in one chapter in one of my books, I say cancer and every other disease is a blessing. Because you see, if everything's going right in your life, you're not going to change. Why should you change? Everything's fine. But when we have terrible trials and temptations and we get ourselves sick, I gave myself cancer. I didn't do it on purpose. I did it ignorantly. Again, I'm a doctor. Doctors don't know anything about getting people well. Doctors live horrible lives related to health. They don't. All the time in my training, there are probably a few doctors who drink water now because it's fashionable and they're biking and they're doing things. But when I was in my training for 20 years after, I never saw a single doctor with a bottle of water, ever.
Wow.
So doctors don't know, and they still don't think it's all that important for your health. It's just that they're thirsty when they work out or whatever. So God has a plan, but that's the only way to get that. There's no other way to get well. Even all these alternatives are not God's health plan. God's health plan is there to change your life. And that's why he calls drug medications sorceries and witchcraft, because Satan comes along and says, you don't need to change anything in your life. Here, take a pill.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Take a pill.
There is a pill for everything these days, you know.
Well, again, I have been well for 22 years, ever since my diagnosis was 25 years ago. And so the health plan works, but it only works if you do it. People say, I've had your health plan, I bought your health plan 5 years ago, but my tumor is getting worse. And I said, well, tell me, how many times have you studied it? Well, actually, I read one book once. I said, it doesn't cure you by sitting on your shelf. Just buying it does not cure you. You have to read it over and over again. I used to speak a lot at various venues, but I don't anymore since 9/11. Traveling is so difficult. And secondly, I put it all in my books because I realized when you go hear someone speak, you only retain 10% of what you learn. So in order to really know it, you've got to read it over and over again. If you're going to take your bar exam, or you're going to take an exam for, even if you're going to be a hairdresser, you read it more than once, because you've got to learn it. You've got to internalize it and learn it. So God wants us to be very, very strong in doing that and learn it. Mm-hmm. But people aren't even studying the Bible, which contains the answer for every problem in our life, and they're not studying it.
That's right. Dr. Day, I want to ask you that question about Talmud and Jewish doctors, but let's just summarize real quick. Of course, I'm going to provide links for the book and DVDs that Dr. Day has on her website that you can purchase, but just quickly summarize one more time the cure for cancer, and then I would like to ask you that question about Talmud and Jewish doctors, because I'm very worried about Noahide loss. People know this. I am extremely worried about that, because your husband is a former congressman, very honest congressman, who was in a service to the people with all of his heart, came out and wrote a open letter to American people, and we have read this already twice on INL News, so there is no excuses. You guys need to know this, and there is a very serious things happening in United States with Noahide laws right now. So one more time, just quick summary of
proper nutrition, a vegan vegetarian diet, which is God's ideal diet.
What do you think about milk? You say vegetarian, but I heard that milk is not really healthy, like milk products.
Milk does not grow in my garden. Does it grow in yours?
No.
No. It's an animal product.
Right.
It comes from an animal. We're the only animal that drinks milk after we're weaned.
Even cows wean off and they don't drink the cow milk anymore. So why did we do it?
You're the only animal that drinks the milk of another animal. Has a cow ever come up to your door and said, I need mother's milk for my calf? No. We don't need milk. And if you want to drink milk, you can get almond milk, rice milk. They taste just as good as regular milk. A milk of a cow is meant to turn a baby calf into a 600-pound cow in 6 months.
That's right.
Well, you don't need that. I wanted to tell you about protein. Protein is only needed for growth and repair. And so when you're growing, you need a little more protein than you need when you're an adult. What's the fastest time in a human being's life that they grow? It's from birth to 6 months. A baby will double its weight. So at birth to 6 months is the time when a baby needs the most percentage, the highest percentage of protein in their whole life. And what's the best food for a baby from birth to 6 months? Mother's milk.
Yeah.
Mother's milk. The protein content in mother's milk is less than 5%.
Wow. That tells you something. And I know that a lot of protein is linked to kidney disease, right? Our kidneys cannot handle it.
First, it's the meat and dairy industry, just like it's the pharmaceutical industry, it's all that. They want you to eat a lot of it. It's all part of population control. We talked about, I think it's 1.6 million babies are aborted every year. Well, there are almost 1.6 million people dying from disease. If you just have cancer and heart disease, you got 1 million people right there. And then all the other diseases. So this is part of population extermination. They don't want you to know truth. Satan does not want you to know truth. And who is telling you no truth? The doctors. I'm not saying all doctors are bad. I have a lot of friends who are doctors. Doctors don't know. And I don't care if they say they're a Christian doctor. If they're giving out drugs, then they're not doing what God wants them to do.
Right.
Because drugs are not of the Lord. I have a picture of the very first pharmacy in America, which happened to be in Massachusetts. Where did they do the witch hunts? In Salem, Massachusetts. I was back there in Massachusetts one time, and I got a book from Salem, Massachusetts, and they have a picture of the very first pharmacy in America. It is a attached to a witch house.
Wow.
So God says there's sorceries and witchcraft.
But what is also their sign? You know, that snake?
Oh, yes, that's the snake on the stick.
Right.
That's the snake on the stick. But the whole point is God has given us a way to get well.
So let's, yeah.
So we should do it. And it's also spiritual. It's not just physical. People say, well, what do I eat? What do I eat? What do I eat? That's only 1/10 of the plan. It's very important, but every step is important, and you need a new heart.
A new heart, forgiveness.
Yes, lack of anger and grudge holding, learning to love your enemies, all of those things are important. It gives you the fruits of the Spirit: patience, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, true faith. Faith, people say, well, I trust Jesus. Well, then how come you're going into the doctor to get drugs?
Now tell us a little bit about vaccines, because I know that vaccine laws are coming and they're trying to force us, not only for children, but for adults as well. Should we avoid vaccines?
They've already been passed in California.
Yeah.
And this is all part of population extermination. Vaccines have never worked. They don't work. They have never prevented disease, ever. The cause of disease was when the Industrial Revolution began and people started moving from the country to the cities. There were no sanitation laws. Whole families lived under staircases. They lived in a room with no windows. They threw their waste material out into the street. Children were working in the mines for 14, 16 hours a day. That's what caused all the disease. The diseases, measles, mumps, chickenpox, all childhood diseases, even tuberculosis, came down 95% with these child labor laws, with better sanitation, with better air in living places. And so that happened before the introduction of any vaccine.
That's right.
The incidence of disease dropped 95%. And after the vaccines, you see, when a child is vaccinated with measles or mumps or whatever, they shed the vaccine in their stool and sometimes in their urine, and they can give other people the disease in their family or out of their family. So they're giving other people disease, and the vaccine doesn't work in them. That's why you have to get revaccinated over and over again. This is a killing mechanism. Bill Gates, who is also, can I say it, Jewish,
Yeah.
He has the big laboratory. He's got the big laboratory in Africa. And the plan is to kill off all the Africans so the big moneyed people can take over all the resources of Africa, including the diamond mines, the oil. Africa is a very rich continent in resources, so they want to kill them.
That's right.
They want to kill them. And this is what they're doing in America. They want to kill people in America, and vaccines is one of the ways they're doing it. And as I said, in the 60s, children got 3 vaccines. In the 80s, they got about 13. And even in the 80s, you heard almost nothing about autism. But now a child gets maybe 52 vaccinations, and the child's being killed by all of the terrible things. And one reason that the vaccine companies have been relieved of all duty to pay off when a child dies or gets sick is because vaccines by their very nature will kill people. They know that. So they said, well, we're not going to do this anymore unless you relieve us of that. And so now the government pays off a few people whose children die.
That's right. They're immune. They're immune to lawsuits. That should tell you everything. I mean, a thinking person should know automatically. You know?
And there was no autism and there was no sudden infant death syndrome before vaccinations.
Yes, it is from the vaccines. Yeah, that's right. Okay, Dr. Day, because of a time restraint, I really want to get to this Talmud because I have given several talks on Talmud and studied Talmud recently a lot for the purpose of exposure of it. So you understand what's in a Jewish club. Most Jews live under Talmudic traditions. Unless they come out of that, their eyes are open and they come to Jesus Christ as the Messiah. But in the Talmud, it is very clear that the Jewish doctors are prohibited from healing any Gentiles. So tell us something about this because you touched on it last time and I said to people that you will talk about this today.
they're going to eliminate virtually all doctors, except they'll have a few Jewish doctors. And I realized this 40 years ago when I was on some committees for the National Institutes of Health, when they were developing protocols for everything. Now a doctor doesn't even have to think. He has to do it a certain way because the protocol has been set up. So when you go to the doctor, even, all they'll give you, again, is a drug, unless you're going to have surgery. That's all they give you. So they have you fill out your symptoms, and so they're going to fix it so that what you fill out will just go into a computer. And out the other end of the computer will come the drugs that you're to be put on. Now, it doesn't take a doctor to do that. They've got it all. They're going to have it all on computer. So they're going to have these clinics. Now, they're already starting them. I said this 15 years ago. They're going to have them in drugstores, and they're going to have them in Walmart. And so what you'll do is you'll just go to the clinic, and right now they'll use physician's assistants who have some training, but eventually they'll just use cashiers at Walmart that they gave 2 weeks of training, and so they'll put them over there because they don't need any brains anyway. It's all the computer. So they'll learn how to take a blood pressure, and they'll learn how to listen to the heart. But they don't need to know much about the heart because they're going to have on like on a Facebook thing with, I mean, not a Facebook, but a FaceTime. They can do that from New York. They'll have Jewish doctors in New York, and they will be able to see the patient. If there's a patient that has anything unusual that the cashier, physician's assistant / don't know how to do, because they just put it in the computer and their drugs will come out, and then what they're supposed to get will come out, and then they'll just go next door right there in the Walmart and get their drugs. So they, if they have an irregular heart rhythm or something, they could just put the stethoscope on there, and it will have, there'll be the people in New York, or they might have a few Jewish doctors in Los Angeles. They can hear it on FaceTime, and they then can tell if there's anything unusual. And suppose a person needs an operation. Well, they're going to have surgical centers in various regions of the United States. You'll have to go someplace, and they will only do that if you can be a useful eater rather than a useless eater, which means, can you make money for the state to pay your taxes, which go to the Federal Reserve, which is all run by the same group? All right, so and that's why we have Federal Reserve notes rather than Treasury notes. And so if you are useful to the state and you can make money so they can make money off of you, because we are slaves. We're slaves. We are slaves to them. Every American works the first half of the year for the Federal Reserve, and all members of the board of directors of the Federal Reserve are Jews. They're all Jews. And the Federal Reserve Act is unconstitutional, but do you know that the Constitution is not operative now? Do you know that?
Yes, we did hear that. Yes.
Because we've got fringe on the flag, and that means in the courtroom, that means it's not operative.
True.
And we can call on the Constitution as much as we want, but it's inoperative now, and most people don't know that. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have a few doctors here and there, in New York, maybe Los Angeles, that are going to be Jews, and they will decide who gets treatment and who doesn't.
Sounds Orwellian.
Yes, well, it is. But this, if you have a bad disease that you're not going to get well from, or it'll cost too much money, they'll just say there's nothing we can do. And you will go then get hospice is part of the plan to help you die comfortably. Mm-hmm. They can do nothing to get you well. They just help you die comfortably. It is satanic. It is satanic. They will give you nothing that can help you. They want you to feel comfortable as you die.
Yes, that's it. I was wondering, because here in Florida where we are, I was noticing everywhere in Walgreens and CVS pharmacies, they have these minute clinic centers, and they're operated by nurse practitioners. I mean, they're utilizing nurse practitioners. Doctors are refusing to work there, of course, but they're utilizing these nurses to just quickly look at the person, test the symptoms, and quickly just prescribe drugs, So.
But that's what it is. See, there's a protocol for everything now, and a doctor can't go against that protocol. One reason my husband is disabled now, as I told you, is that he broke his hip almost 5 years ago. The doctor fixed his hip, and I told the doctor, now they have hospitalists. Are you familiar with hospitalists?
No.
Oh, when you are in the hospital, the doctor who has been your regular doctor never sees you in the hospital. And that's for the convenience of the nurses, because the doctors were too hard to contact. So now they have what they call a hospitalist. It's kind of a stupid name, but it's a doctor who just takes care of the patients in the hospital, and he does whatever he wants.
Wow.
He does whatever he wants. And so your doctor that you've been going to all the time never even sees you when you're in the hospital. And so the hospitalist has a protocol. And if you're going to have a hip operated on, you have to be put on blood thinners. Well, the reason that people need to be put on blood thinners, the reason doctors say, is because their blood clots too much. Well, if you're a vegan vegetarian, you're not eating all that fat. Your blood will not abnormally clot. You don't need to be on blood thinners. And I told them that. And they know I'm an orthopedic surgeon. And I said, don't put my husband on blood thinners. He doesn't need them, because he's a vegan vegetarian just like I am. They did it anyway, and when he came out of the operation, he bled 3/4 of his blood volume into his wound within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then his mind was gone. And then I took him out of the hospital against medical advice, called AMA, against medical advice. So the doctors turned me in to Adult Protective Services for elderly abuse because I wouldn't let him take the drugs.
Wow. And now you got him better. You take care of him. He's still here with us.
Still here, and he's still strong. In fact, one time he was able to walk 15 miles. This is after he'll be 90 in September. He'll be 90. Walk 15 miles. But his mind, he has some long-term memory, but he doesn't have any short-term memory because they wiped it out, because they bled him almost to death. And this is what they're doing. And I said to them, I said, the protocol says you give blood thinners. I said, if my husband dies because you bleed him to death, it's no different than if he dies from a pulmonary embolism from a blood clot.
Right.
I said, right? Well, yeah, right. And I said, because you do it because you don't want to get sued. You don't care if my husband lives or dies. You don't want to get sued. And they said, that's right.
Well,
that's right.
Exactly.
They were upfront about it. You see, they don't care whether the patient lives or dies. They just don't want to get sued. So they have to obey the protocol. Otherwise, they get called in on the carpet. So you can have a moron doing this now. You don't have to have a doctor with all this experience. You can have a Walmart cashier with 2 weeks of how you take a blood pressure, maybe a week of how you take a blood pressure and how you put a stethoscope on the heart, because they don't even have to know what those sounds are, because the Jewish doctor in New York or LA can listen to it and decide whether this person's going to live or die.
That's right. So all you need is a person who can either memorize the protocols or have them written out somewhere, and he can perform the duties. You know, how far is that, Dr. Dave, from original doctor position, being a physician, you know?
Right. But again, here's the good news. God says you don't even have to go there. Just do it my way.
Right.
Just do it my way.
The great physician, Lord
That's
Jesus. Yes. Well, thank you, Dr. Dave. We are out of time, but I hope that this was a treat for you. I know that some things are strongly said here, but please have an open mind and open heart. We are so happy that Dr. Dave has agreed to this, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hope to have you again, maybe for some other discussions. And I hope that you guys go to her website, buy her books and DVDs, and you get educated more on human body and what the human body really needs. And more importantly, who is our greatest physician, which is Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening.